I hope you don't mind, but I'm in the shade because it's just way too hot to be in the sun. So hopefully the lighting's good. Now straight into it, the L-sit. It's a crucial skill for beginners to learn in calisthenics. And I think a lot of people rush this step. But let me quickly demonstrate an L-sit. Apologies for my dirty feet. Okay, so it's pretty self-explanatory. You're just making the L shape with your body. In my opinion, you need to have these prerequisites before you should even attempt learning an L-sit. First, you want to be able to do 10 full range of motion strict push-ups where you're locking out at the top, all the way down, locking out at the top, very strict. Secondly, you want to be able to touch your toes, flexibility. And then lastly, you want to be able to do 10 L-sit leg raises. Now, you're not holding the L-sit in these, you're just touching the shape and going back, relatively controlled. I don't have dip bars or parallel bars right now, so a lot of these exercises I'm going to demonstrate on the rings, but obviously just use dip bars or parallel bars. Most people, when attempting to learn the L-sit, they'll go through this method. It's the most common, where you go through the different progressions. I'm going to try talk while I do this, but I'm pretty tired. So first you have the tuck L-sit, right? Then advanced tuck, and then you'll move on to one leg straight at a time, into pulses where you're like squeezing, touching the position and back. And so just eventually you'll be able to hold the L-sit position. Sorry, I am very tired. There's nothing wrong with that, right? A lot of people learn the L-sit that way and you will get stronger and most likely get it. I have trained a lot of people, I'm a personal trainer. Through my method, they've unlocked the L-sit without really even trying or attempting it, because there's three main components of the L-sit, and if you attack each one and get really good at each one, then the chances are, without actually specifically attempting the L-sit, you're just going to be able to do it. There's a strength component, there's a flexibility component, and then lastly, there's a core compression component. And what I mean by that is just your core strength while in a compressed sort of shape. If you're watching this, you're probably struggling in one or multiple of these areas. And now how do I identify that? Well, what I want you to do is I want you to film yourself and you're going to give your best attempts at an L-sit and try hold it for like 6 to 10 seconds. Really give it a solid go so you can see what you're doing. You're going to try identify the following mistakes, and depending on what you do, it's going to highlight which area I want you to work in. So mistake number one, if during the L-sit your shoulders keep shrugging up towards your ears and you're struggling to keep them depressed, and also if you're struggling to keep your elbows straight and they keep on bending, then most likely you have a strength deficit, and that's the area I need you to work in. Mistake number two, if your knees are nice and high, so they're in line or above your hips, but you're struggling to keep them straight, then most likely you have a flexibility issue, and that's the area you need to work in. And then lastly, mistake number three, if your legs are straight but they're angling downwards, or your knees are below your hip line, then you probably have a core strength issue in that compressed shape, and that's where we need to work on. I'm going to give you exercises that will help you improve and strengthen yourself in each area. Now also remember, you could be struggling in multiple areas, so then do multiple of these exercises. So we're going to start with the most basic thing, which is flexibility. If you suffer in the flexibility area, I'll give you a few stretches you can do. I just think it's very important to focus on more than just your hamstrings. Working on stretching out your hip flexors, your quads and your hamstrings is going to give you the best results. Moving on to strength. Just keep in mind that, like I said, you should be able to do at least 10 normal push-ups before you try to do L-sits. The first exercise is going to be pseudo push-ups. Now you can do this on the floor or you could do this on parallel bars. If you're on the floor, just remember to turn your hands out a little bit. The thing I love about pseudo push-ups is you're in control of how intense the exercise is. Pseudo push-ups are pretty much normal push-ups where you're leaning forward and your shoulders are in front of your hands. And obviously the further forward you lean, the more intense it's going to be, the more body weight's on your hands. Go really slow with it, but very important, treat each rep almost like a pause rep where you're going to lock out at the top and focusing on protracting your shoulders and making sure your elbows are straight, because we want to try imitate what you're doing in the L-sit. I would also recommend doing 3 sets of this, but try not drop below 6 reps. Don't rush it. But exercise number 1 is going to be pseudo push-ups. Exercise number 2 is regular dips. Now, if you cannot do normal dips, then I recommend doing negatives and holds. Or I do this with a lot of people, is you get them to hold at the top of a dip for like 10 seconds, focusing on locking out the arms. Then after 10 seconds, you do a slow negative as controlled as you can. Once you get to just below 90 degrees, you step off and then you jump up again and you hold for another 10 seconds and you try to do 3 reps in a row like that. If you can do regular dips, then the same as with the pseudo push-ups, I want you to focus on locking out at the top and having a slight lean forward so your shoulders are in the same position that they would be during an L-sit. And then also I'd recommend doing 3 sets. If you can't do 3 negatives, then there's no point working on the dips. Rather go back and focus on your pseudo push-ups and just build up the lean over time. So that's the strength component. That's just purely body weight. If you can do 10 dips with your body weight, you know that you have your strength hands down on lock. Now the last component I think the most people struggle with is the compression core strength. I'm going to give you 3 different exercises in varying level of difficulty for this. The first is going to be jackknives. When you do jackknives, what I want you to do is I want you to start in a hollow body shape. So your feet and hands aren't touching the floor, nice and extended. Then I want you to come up to meet your arms with your legs, but I do not want you to hold onto your legs. I just want you to touch and then see if you can pause in that position for like a second before you come back down. And when you're resting, you aren't touching the floor. You're just in your regular hollow body position. Now, if you can build up to 10 reps like this, that's a solid start and you're ready to move on to the second exercise, which is going to be, I call these grounded compression leg raises. They're awesome for the ulcer and similar to pseudo push-ups, you can control how hard the intensity is of the exercise. All you're going to do is leg raises where your hands are touching the floor. Now, also, if you're on your fingertips, right, it's way easier than if you flat palm on the floor. I recommend, and I try to get a lot of people to do these with flat palms on the floor. The further forward your arms are or the hands are on the floor, the more compressed your body is and the harder it's going to be to lift up your legs. So I want you to try do 10 reps of these without touching the floor with your feet, just up and down, small mini reps. Don't expect to be able to lift high. If you can't do 10, then you can try do holds. So that's where you're just going to lift your legs up and squeeze as tight as you can and keep them there. Don't worry about going up or down, then just keep fighting to stay in the air. And like I said, you can build this up over time. You can start with your hands quite close to your hips and then slowly build it up and go forward and more closer towards your feet. Just don't have your hands behind your hips. If you can't have them in line, if you can't have them in front of your hips, there's no point doing this. Go back to working on jackknives. Then the last exercise is toaster bar, a core ab exercise in gymnastics and in calisthenics. So work on your toaster bar. It's quite self-explanatory. Just try to keep your legs a bit straighter than I'm doing here. My legs are bending a little bit. And if you could work up to 10 reps of this, then you definitely have enough compression core strength to do the ulcer. Those are the 3 main areas of the ulcer that if you get good at, you're going to nail it down. And those are the exercises I recommend working on in order to do the ulcer. I think you should keep going until you can do an ulcer on the floor. That's like the ultimate test to if you've mastered the ulcer, because obviously if you're on parallel bars, you have a lot more height. So it's a lot easier. It is a lot more intense on your wrists, so warm them up. But yeah, to give you a little demonstration, last version of the ulcer, boom, on the floor, nice and easy. So all 3 components need to be there in order to do that. So work up to it until you can do it on the floor. Just to summarize, how are you going to master the ulcer? You're going to build solid strength in your upper body and your core and have decent flexibility. Master the 3 elements of the ulcer and you're going to get it. It sounds really simple and that's because it is, but a lot of people like to rush it and just go for the attempts. And there's nothing wrong with that, but if you follow my method and actually just develop your foundation, it's going to put you in a way better position for later on when you try to learn more advanced skills. Take your time with it. Last thing I'll say is how to structure your training. So if you're close to getting the ulcer, I'd recommend going for attempts in the beginning, then go into your strength work for your upper body, followed by strength work for your core, and then lastly, stretching. If you have any questions, let me know, and I promise I will get back to you. All the best, good luck with your training and enjoy.